Well, once I mastered Severance, I got a lot of stuff.
Hi everyone, welcome in. I'm sharing to Discord real quick, so give me a second. Okay, there we go. Hi Yuab, how are you doing today, my friend? Let's share this to some people. We have you, and 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 let's see. You, I, Ethan.
Oops. Deals a lot of damage.
Wechtaluk.
There's this rogue work disaster that I'm getting rid of.
There we go. Hi, Michael. Welcome in. I'm glad you're doing good, Yuav. Okay, so we're going to add one product to this. Where is it? There it is. That is because I'm using it. Oh, it's Farmer Goku from Dragon Ball Super. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for reposting the live. So, Ethan Wechtaluk, Wechtaluk will be joining us here momentarily. He is from Maryland. He is running for their U.S. House of Representatives seat in Congressional District 6. Hey, Breaking the Meta, how are you? And welcome in, my friend. So Breaking the Meta is somebody who he's been doing what I've been doing since September. He's been doing more of a podcast, streaming on Twitch, YouTube, stuff like that. He's not doing it so much as a TikTok live interview, although he has said that's something that eventually he wants to branch into, which I think is amazing. Let's see. Move that. Move this. Hey, Aiden, do you want to go grab me an incense from the closet? Trump's EO today to permit rabbis to... You know what, Ray Paul, do we just need to move you along today? I think we might just need to move you along today. Hi, Eddie. Welcome in. Thank you. Getting ready for the National Security Panel live tonight. Yeah, I saw that I joined your bulletin board. And so I saw that you had posted something about that with the new interview and how the lady that you had posted about was going to be on the panel that night as well. I'm doing really good. Hi, Ethan. Welcome in. Let me turn the volume up.
All right.
I can hear you.
Can you hear? You can hear me. All right. Now let's figure out why I can't be seen.
So this is a common thing. If you can't find the button, then you'll have to leave and then rejoin.
All right. Hold on.
That's what I figured out from everybody going, oh, there it is, because it wasn't there before. So you are saying, plus finally, after so many years of DB Legends, the main character of the game, Charlotte, is finally getting a new outfit, and it is Farmer Goku's outfit. Oh, that's awesome. Welcome in, everyone.
There we go. Hello.
Hi, welcome in. And I'm glad that I did not butcher your last name too much.
You didn't. No, you did. You did perfectly fine. I appreciate the concern on it, but no, it's Wechtaluk. So you got it. It looks really bad. I trust it. It looks awful to pronounce, and most people panic. So you're not alone in that. But you did fine.
Understand? My last name is Italian. It's very Italian. It has rolling R's and Z's involved. And at the end, okay, it's very Italian. So it's one of those. When anybody can actually pronounce or spell my last name correctly, I'm amazed. Amazed, which is part of the reason why I'm like, I'm so sorry if I fudged it up. Did not mean to.
Oh no.
I'll get better.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. Yeah, mine's Ukrainian, and I tell people this is the scary part. It's actually the Americanized version of my name. So
Yeah.
this is what my great grandfather thought would be easier for people. I guess I don't. I wasn't there to help with that decision. He made that decision. Him and my great grandmother. So I'm stuck with it. I'll make the best of it.
So, like for my last name, when we immigrated over, we kept the spelling. It's just the pronunciation changed to a more Americanized, where you don't roll the R's or pull the Z's.
Yeah,
It's much
yeah,
shorter and abrupt. So
yeah.
it's a bastardized version of the actual pronunciation.
Well, and I feel like that's pretty common. What I understand with Italian names too. I'm a big Formula One racing fan, and there was a race car driver, Daniel
Yes.
Ricciardo, but I heard him say one time that if it was Italian, it would be Ricciardo and not Ricciardo. So I've heard that that's common, but I actually have no clue what the original version of my last name would
Right.
have been when my great grandfather. And this is great relevant topic. He was an illegal immigrant, actually,
I love
and so
that.
when he came over, they didn't have a lot of paperwork. So I have his World War I draft card, and I saw what he's put it on that, which is slightly different spelling. But then when he married my great grandmother, it's Wechtaluk as it's spelled now.
Right.
Um, I don't know why he changed it in between. There was, it's about a 7-8 year span, I think, between those two dates. I don't know what prompted him to change the spelling of the name. But when he married my great grandmother, it's been that way ever since. So, and it's particularly relevant, then that would make my great grandfather a birthright citizen. Topic thrust into the news.
Yes.
So,
Whole other conversation about birthright
Exactly.
and how they want to take it away from anybody whose great grandparents or earlier immigrated. And I'm like, but my great grandparents immigrated, but that same family line, I have Native American blood. So what are you going to do with
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm quintessentially American in some aspects with that because again, my great grandfather was a legal immigrant, came over, snuck into the country aboard a ship. That's on my dad's side. On my mom's side of the family, I have family that came over in the mid 1600s. So they've been here a long time. Pre everything in this country. And so like I feel I have this doesn't make me better obviously than anyone else, but it just gives me a unique perspective on that. I do, have some family that I will admit this, even as I'm running for Congress, they left America and went to Canada during the Revolution. They were loyalists. So we'll just, say that. They did come back later. Some of them did. Some of them are still in Canada. Some of that branch is still there. But yeah, it gives you unique perspectives when you look at those family issues and talk about that. You see a lot of the challenges and struggles that go on, and as I think particularly relevant, we're all, unless you're like you have Native American blood. I can't be. How can you be illegal on stolen land? I mean, as the expression goes.
I'm still a child of immigrants because
Yes,
outside of that
we all
one
are.
line, okay, understand the red in my family came from the marriage to the Native American because she came over from Ireland as an indentured servant, which is a pretty name for white slavery. Let's be honest.
Exactly. We can call it whatever we want, but that's exactly what it is. Yeah.
So she was actually kidnapped, ended up being, pulled into their Cherokee tribe for years. And it was her grandkids that re-emerged into white society. So it's one of those, there is a story there. But again, my great-grandparents immigrated from Italy. It was 4 brothers. One stayed in Italy, one went to Australia, 2 came to America, and one of those went to Canada. So we have family all over the world. Anybody in the world with my last name or says they descend from somebody with my last name, we're all related. We are all related by blood.
Yeah.
But I know not every family can say that because not every Smith or Davidson or John, Baker is going to be related in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a curse and a blessing when you have a unique name, that it's easy, to trace heritage.
The only person in the world with your name.
Yeah.
That's the reason why nobody knows my name.
That's me too. There are about, what did I think? There's about 10 or so Wechtaluks in the entire world. Just period. Like that's it. because my great grandfather, as far as I know, was an only child.
Right.
Came over to the United States. His parents, died, and it started with my great grandfather and my great grandmother, and I know all of them. My daughter is, my youngest daughter. She's the youngest.
Right.
Of that, but yeah, I'm the only Ethan Wechtaluk in the entire world. So it's great when I Google myself because I know it's going to come back for me. It's also bad when I don't want to Google myself because it's really easy to find me when I look.
Exactly.
Well,
that's the reason why I go by Shadow. It just makes it easier because then I don't have to worry about stalkers, creepers, people like that, finding my address and being like, oh, we're going to show up on our doorstep. Because I've had that happen once before. It was 20 years ago when, streaming first started and all that fun stuff. And that terrified the ever-loving crap out of me. I was living with
I bet. One of the things, and I was just having this conversation with another congressional candidate who was in a group chat, and they were saying how they felt like they've arrived because they got their first death threat. And there's an unfortunate reality as congressional candidates that we get death threats, and I've thought about that several times, and most of them they're not serious. I mean, it's you get unfortunate realities, you get used to it, right? You shouldn't have to normalize that.
Used to any of the stuff that we've been inured that we just have gotten used to.
You shouldn't, and it's just it's ridiculous that we're there as a country. But I told him, I said, what you need to do is keep a log of them and look at the creative ways that they suggest that they're going to kill you, because that's fun. I can look back and think of all of the creative,
Oh, and then you start putting together reels of it, but like, look at the strategies. Like, hey, guys, get more creative. If you're going to send them, get more creative. Come on.
I know.
Let's get creative.
Don't just tell me you're going to murder me. I mean, put some thought behind it, right?
Like, let's just put, like, all of it. Like, put some thought into this and then send it to me. Like, take
exactly.
out. Like, go old school 80s stalker.
Absolutely. Like, I want to see the detail. I'm a horror movie fan. I love horror movies. I love slasher films. So, like, give me the details here. Like, you're gonna do it, right? You're gonna put it on the record. You're gonna throw it out there. At least
do it. Just do it right. Like,
go for it.
Go home. Come on.
Exactly.
There's not gonna be a lawsuit involved. Why are you even sending it out?
Exactly. If I have to take out a restraining order to protect myself against you, I want to give them something to read. And just saying you're going to kill me is boring.
Well, everybody keeps saying that. Get crazy.
Yeah. I've heard it all at this point, like I said, it is a sad indictment of, where we are, that people, and honestly, it's funny because it comes from, it comes from both sides. I mean, I've gotten death threats from Democrats. So it's just troubling, it's troubling, and we shouldn't, we joke about it, right? To make light of the situation, but, it is concerning, and, I don't have the resources to hire, one of my opponents is a billionaire and has been walking around with his private security detail, and, I don't have those resources to hire private security,
but that's
factor of that.
And that's actually to bring up the point that one of your competitors is a billionaire. Okay, I this billionaire. I will do the research. How did he start out? Has he always been rich? Has he experienced poverty? Has he actually felt what it's like to go to the grocery store and have to look at his bank account before he makes the purchase because he doesn't know if he has enough money to buy groceries for the week?
So it's worth prefacing this when I say one of my opponents is a billionaire, that the other is only a multi-hundred millionaire.
Right.
Only.
But that's just it. When it comes to some of these people who are running, is have you ever actually walked a day in my shoes? Or are you walking from privilege and only privilege? Because I will be the first. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, as I say, they tell these stories, and when you wax poetic about their childhood, right? And one of them, David Trone, who's the billionaire, will tell this story of like what he experienced, and you take it at face value, right? Like you're saying, like, has he understood this, and I've experienced, some of this in my life. And, when I met my wife, she was a single mother. She was on Medicaid and SNAP. So I saw firsthand exactly what that, I mean, so I know what that looks like. I've seen that. And, so you hear the stories from them and you want to believe. I've heard someone say, well, once you're poor, you're always poor. You never like get rid of that, attitude and mindset.
There's
And
always
both my
something in the back of your mind where you have to do A, you have to do B, you have to do C, because those were the things that made it so you survived during those times. So your brain is so inured, and you have to do those 3 things, and they are habits you will never ever break, which is some of the things that we look at when we look at these people and say, oh yeah, I've been through that. Well, then how come you don't have some of these? That is definitely a poor person tendency.
Well, and I think about this from my own family because I've been very privileged. My grandparents worked hard and my parents worked hard, but two of my grandparents were born in the house that they grew up in, because they were dirt poor, and and so my grandparents had that attitude. They passed it on to my parents, and again, and so I've experienced some of it, but I think for some of them, when you reach billionaire status, that sounds kind of judgmental for me to say, but does it even really matter where you came from? Because when you have that much money, it's kind of like are you even understand that anymore?
Exactly.
Well, and I look at them from that perspective of like when they talk about issues that matter, like talk about Medicare, they talk about Social Security. You don't have to worry about it. I have family members who rely on Social Security for that's their monthly income, and they use Medicare and they rely on Medicare. It's personal for me when we talk about that. For David Trone, my one opponent, or the incumbent April McLean Delaney, again, she's worth several $100 million. Like they don't care if Social Security goes under tomorrow. They're not going to care. If Medicare collapses, they're not going to care. Yeah, and so like for me, I care. If Medicare goes under, I have my mom can't. That's her health insurance. It's my grandmother's health insurance. It's my uncle's, health insurance. They all, my grandmother and my uncle rely on Social Security, and even my mom, like that's her primary income in addition to, other savings and retirement. But still, like that's what supports them. And they would hurt. They would be okay, but they would hurt. But my opponents, it doesn't even matter. Like, and so it's, and also when you make that kind of money, there's the saying, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire, right? David Trone made his money. He's a co-founder of Total Wine, the large alcohol conglomerate. And, I think how many thousands of workers he's had. And he's been lately thumping around talking about how he loves unions, but none of his employees are unionized, right? And
if you love unions so much, why don't you let your employees unionize?
It's a great question. I've asked him that, and he's never responded to that to me. So it's like he.
Oh, I love it. Little. My husband is part of a union. It's the reason why after X amount of years, when AT&T keeps doing their layoffs, because they do it 2-3 times a year, they trim the fat. He's on the totem pole. He doesn't have to worry. He no longer has to worry because of the union.
It's unions are, my grandfather was a union steelworker, 30-ish years. I don't know exactly how long, worked for, American Bridge, built, steel for bridges across the country. We talk about the, unions built and middle class built America. I mean, that's literally, like, there's steel and bridges that are carved out together that my grandfather helped produce. And, and so I think they lose that mindset, right? And so, and the same with, April McLean Delaney, her husband is, he's co-founder of a bank right now. It's about to launch their IPO, and he's launched other companies. I mean, great. He's been successful, but you make that much money. You're making it off the backs of other people. You're making it off of taking advantage of the capitalist system that incentivizes you to do that. Yep. And, have they given money back to charitable causes? Sure, they have. Great. But what have they done enough? I mean, and some people would say, well, that's not my place to criticize and critique whether they've done enough. And well, you're not in that, I called them out for how much money they're donating to other candidates to buy endorsements, right? That's my, are they buying endorsements? Are they just making targeted donations, specific donations, and endorsements just, right? It's a question.
Roll in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That happened to roll in. And, I've raised that question, and I've been transparent about when I donated, and someone questioned me. They said, well, but you don't have the money, so why does it matter? I said, but that's exactly the point. Even if I had the money, I still wouldn't do that because it's unethical. That
is the entire point. It is
the point, yeah.
Money. And even if you did, you wouldn't do that because it's not ethical. Yeah. And that's the thing of where we're at in our country right now is ethically because we'll take a side note. This is the reason I have notes. So tangents. Because I love tangents. Okay. I'll be the first to admit Nerd talk is nerd talk because we have ADHD, and if you know anything about people with ADHD, we like tangents.
Oh yes, my daughter has ADHD. I
To
understand.
the topic because I have topics written down.
Yes. Yes.
So to put a pin on that, we're going to talk about real quick the difference between representatives and politicians, because this is the huge issue we have in our country right now.
Yep.
It boils down to morals and ethics. Representatives are there to represent the constituents first in their districts, then in their state, and then in their country. That is what representatives do. That is why that's why I'm going out and finding people who fit that. Because those are the kind of people I want to help get out there. I want to help promote, because those are the people who deserve it, because they are there for me. They are there for you. They are there for my son. Even if they've never met my kids, they want to make sure my kids have what they need in order to grow and live a fulfilling life into adulthood, and then a better life after adulthood. Why? Because our next generation matters. It doesn't matter if you've never met my kids or their kids or their kids, or, you know, that kid's brother's friend. It does not matter if you've never met them. What matters is their kid. And as a country, we need to support our kids and we need to support our women. That is what we need to do as a country if we want to turn around this steep downhill slope we've gone down. Second,
100% agree.
We have politicians. Politicians are they're there for their corporations, and they're there to line their own pockets. They have been bought by the corporations. As somebody once said, if they all had to wear jackets like NASCAR race drivers did, you would be so very goddamn telling who's buying bought by. Okay.
I've never heard that before, but I love that. I love that. Mine would be very sparse and would have no logos whatsoever.
You know, and that's or you might have one or two local, you know, places like
exactly. Yeah.
My massage company, like you're in my district, I throw $500 towards you because that's a contribution I can do with my company to support you, because I've done that as a person and I've done that as a company, because that's what I can do, and be transparent about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why?
Yeah.
Because I can do that. I can support you. Please. Have my logo on there, because there's nothing to be ashamed of. I'm just a local massage therapist trying to heal people. Yeah.
It's, you know, I talked about this. I mean, today it's obviously April Fool's, and I made the joke and that today that, you know, Congress, they vote, you know, based off their conscience. And I was like, no, that's the joke. They don't. They both vote based off their donors, right?
They don't.
And, you know, I am increasingly becoming a target of AIPAC. In this race, when this race started, my opponent, April McLean Delaney, had taken about $32,000 from AIPAC. Now she's up to about $250,000, and I feel honored, partially that AIPAC thinks I'm worth that. I'm flattered, really, I really am. And I'm also, you know, that's a joke. But I'm also honored that Track AIPAC, you know, the wonderful team that's doing it, has, you know, endorsed me, because, you know, I've planted my foot on that, and planted my foot on, you know, I've signed the Patients Over Profits pledge, the No Fossil Fuel Money pledge, the No Big Tech Money pledge, you know, and I'm not accepting corporate PAC donations, because it's insidious the way they get their tentacles in. And again, whether it's someone like AIPAC representing a foreign interest, or, you know, corporation, you know, Representative McLean Delaney took money from Walmart, and then she goes and turns around and supports and visits the Walmart pharmacy processing facility in our district. And then she talks about supporting small businesses. Well, how can you support small businesses when you're supporting Walmart, the company who... Yeah, you can't, because Walmart they have their reputation for destroying small business. That's what they do.
Walmart absolutely destroys small businesses. Your little mom and pop shops that used to be able to offer, you know, the local goods at a cheap price, they can't compete. They just cannot compete.
And she's talking about how we're going to lower costs and improve affordability. Like, the way that does that is, you know, the antitrust regulations and stopping companies like Walmart from creating, you know, zones where no one else can compete. They come in, they destroy all the small businesses, and then when there's no competition, they can raise prices, and they have a captive audience, and no one can do anything about it. And so it's, you know, when you see politicians who represent those ideals and take that money, it calls into question. It's to me, it's like, well, she's only taking money from Walmart, but maybe she's fine over here. But can you really say that? You know, and you can't, because when they do it for one company and one sector, they'll do it for all. Where's the line drawn? And that's the scary part for me. Which is why I've said across the board, I'm not taking money. I mean, my one of my congressional heroes is Shirley Chisholm, African American woman who was a pioneer in the '70s of representation, and her slogan was "Unbought and Unbossed." And I love that because she just didn't take it from anyone, and she wasn't for sale to anyone. And I've tried to emulate that because and again, I've there's been this like debate. People say, well, you don't take any corporate PAC money, and I pledge not to take any corporate PAC money. But like you're saying, if someone in my district, if a company in my district wants to give me money, fine.
Yeah.
But there's no quid pro quo. There's nothing there.
No,
You're giving a donation because you believe in me, because you support me. Great, I'll take your money. But I'm not going to do anything special for you than the person who gave me. I had someone, and I'd be fairly confident that I knew they were young, but I think they may be a high school student who gave me $1. That means so much to me, right?
Right.
The person that the company in my district who gives me a large donation versus the high school student who gives me $1, they matter the same amount to me, and I will fight to represent them the exact same way. And so the money in in politics, and you're right, the difference between a representative, someone who actually cares about the people they represent, and a politician who just cares about enriching themselves off public service. And that's why I say this is representative democracy. I'm running to represent the people, bring power back to the people. I'm not running to represent my pocketbook, my 401k, my portfolio. I don't, it's, and so I've pledged to not trade stocks in office. I've actually already eliminated all stocks from my portfolio when I started running. And yeah, I will, I'll put things in a blind trust as well.
That simple, and putting in a blind trust, all of that simply because that shows that you truly, truly are there for the people. You are not trying to enrich yourself. You're showing a good example from the get-go. This is what I've done. Like, I won't touch any of that until I'm done running, period. Like, I'm good. I love it because that kind of just reassures us and shows us that you truly have that level of dedication that we're looking for, that you truly do want to represent us. Because me personally, the only thing I ask is fight for our kids and vote with your conscience. Please, for the love of God, just fight for your children and vote with your conscience.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm a parent of 3 kids, and and there are 3 daughters, right? So you're talking about fighting for our kids and fighting for women. I mean, that's personal to me.
I have a daughter.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing is, if it's not personal, then what did you come out of?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of women these days, and this is part of the birth rate issue. It's in Korea where they said, and American women are echoing it. I will not give birth to something that will hate me because society tells him to.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And can you blame women for not wanting to give birth to a son that's going to grow up to hate them for giving birth to them, for being female? That's going to their siblings because they're female? No.
It's the hypocrisy, so much of it's like the one representative from Florida who was vehemently anti-abortion until she had an ectopic pregnancy, and then she picked up the phone to call Ron DeSantis to get an exemption to get an abortion in the state of Florida, and it's like, and she got one, but it's like, how and I don't understand. I mean, we've taught our daughters from a young age, my body, my choice, no means no, and but like to teach them that. But I also know that there's still going to be some boy who maybe he's not going to respect that, and I've always told them, you if you have to defend yourself, you defend yourself. And
like, I don't care if you're gonna if that boy is touching you and you've told him to stop, slug him.
Exactly. I might ask questions once we get to the truth. We'll talk about what happens afterwards. But
I'll defend you, and then we'll sit down and be like, okay, girl, you got to tell me exactly what happened. So I can defend you with this one.
And then my oldest, and I have 2 of my daughters are on the spectrum. And so, I've worked to you about bullying, and especially my oldest, that I told her that I was like, you get bullied, you tell me, I will back you up 100%. I will be there. And she knows it. I mean, she knows she can, that I will, she got bullied one day in school, and she has her her IEP, or not IEP. They have IEPs and 504s, and her plan allows her to have her Apple Watch because she uses it like because she's got ADHD as well, so she uses it for like timers and reminders and things like that. It's very helpful for her. She knows not to text us in an emergency, and so she texted me one day, and it's like, "Well, this is an emergency," and I was like, "Oh," I was like, "What's going on?" She'd been bullied. She'd gotten pushed in the lunch line and gotten upset, and the teacher hadn't seen it, and she tried to tell the teacher, and she felt like she wasn't hurt. I was at the school. I mean, the school's in our neighborhood, so I was at the school in less than 10 minutes to like be there and like to back her up and to make sure, and I'm on the PTA at her school, so the teachers know me. And so, but like that was a reminder to her that I've got your back, but it's there's a cultural thing, there's a societal thing that I think that we have to work on and encourage. And like we talked at the outset with the threats of violence and things like that. I mean, we've devolved in some aspects of it, and I'd really like to see ways that we can. People talk about this, lower the temperature of the conversation. I don't entirely know what that looks like, but I think Trump has normalized a lot of rhetoric that is incredibly toxic and incredibly vile, and it's damaging.
They've normalized him.
Yes.
They have normalized and accepted him and just said, "Oh, well, that's just Trump being Trump." Well,
yeah.
I'm not sorry when I say that's vile and disgusting. Should we not normalize any of that?
Absolutely. No, we shouldn't. It's just.
I still remember the clip I heard recently because, mind you, this man is in dementia. He's on his deathbed. He is just rambling, and everything's coming out is the truth. So keep that in mind. When he rambles and says, "Oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about." No, guys, he's speaking the inside thoughts out loud because he's on death's door. Okay, let's be honest with this. But he was sitting there and mumbling about age 6 was the age of consent. And I'm sitting there going, anybody else putting 2 and 2 together with that statement? Because he's not incorrect with how he thinks.
Yeah,
he said he would date his daughter.
Yeah, and he's just got a whole history too, and like of saying things, and we've glossed over it and normalized it, and then how everyone around, you got Marco Rubio up there who's talking about birthright citizenship. Do we remind Marco Rubio that he was born in the United States to Cuban immigrants who were not U.S. citizens when he was born in the United States? So he would thus be illegal.
He does understand that if he pushes that too hard, even though he's on the Congress, he himself will lose his birthright citizenship.
And maybe I've also thought about this. Maybe that's Marco Rubio's exit. Maybe that's what he's trying to do. Maybe that's
plan. Like, how do I get
he's trying to get out of this, and like this is what. Oh God, I'm not a citizen anymore. I can't do this. Oh God, oh no. What maybe that's his goal. Maybe that's his end game for this. But it's just there's so many yes people around him who reinforce these ideas and these things, and then he says something and spews it off, and again like that, like we were saying, and it's like. No one wants to check this. No one wants to comment on this.
No one wants to check it. No one wants to contradict it. Everybody's just going to accept it as gospel.
Yeah, it's I see in the comment he has no ability to filter his thoughts. I mean, that's exactly right. He has no ability to filter his thoughts, and it's dangerous. And that's dangerous on anyone. Yeah. This is the president of the United States. He's got access.
The best part is back in March of 25. They ran a dementia competency test, and he failed it dramatically, but he was talking about how he passed his intelligence test because he scored so high. My dude, scoring high on those tests is a bad thing.
You don't want to score high on that test.
No, you want single digits, not triple digits, okay?
Yeah, it's and again, I think he's got an iron grip on so many people, and I want to think in his first administration, I thought okay, that these people will wake up, and you're seeing some people who have, but I think we've also reached a point where so much damage has happened and so many destructive things have occurred that even if some of these people come around later, it's too late. I mean, you were complicit. Yeah, you normalize this behavior. You voted for it. You authorized it.
You not just that, you enabled it. You were an enabler. You pushed and accepted it. You are just as culpable.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that when I get to Congress is I'm not going to let slide. I'm not going to let I'm not going to look at some of these people. Because this is one of the things I talk about when I talk about different pieces of legislation and coalition building is, there's people I'm sure on both sides of the aisles who agree with me on some points. I'm going to find those people, but I'm not going to universally agree with them just because I agree with them on one particular issue and I, work with them on that. That doesn't change what they've done. And I'm going to make sure and hold them accountable for what they've done. And if they don't like me for that, that's tough. But I'm not here to,
I'm not here to be your best friend. I'm here to make a change and hold people accountable.
Exactly. I'm here to represent the people, and this is what the people want. The people want to see you held accountable. And so I'm going to hold you accountable, and I'm going to make sure that, whatever justice looks like is served, right? And people talk about political capital, right? Like it's a finite resource, like it's a battery, right? When you deplete it, you're out of it. And I push back on that. I push back because I had some people early on. They're like, "Well, be careful how much you say, or what and I don't make promises, but kind of like be careful what you say you want to accomplish or what you say you want to do, because if you try to say you're going to do too much, then you're never going to be able to get it done." And I'm honest about that. When I talk with some people about certain things, that yes, some things are going to be an uphill battle to get past. I don't expect when I talk about Medicare for all or anything like that it's going to be easy to do, right? And it's not. But to expend the political capital, it's not a finite resource. I will keep pushing every day. And I talked to a constituent recently. I was telling him about my day one plan, and he said maybe you could call it your everyday plan, because some of these things are going to have to be every day. And I like that. It's an everyday plan, because for me, that political capital, it almost like resets. Like I go to bed, I rejuvenate it, and I can come back with a fresh set of political capital to push for these things, to push for what needs to be done, to get those things accomplished. And, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I make no promises, but I know what I want to do. And, I know what the people need, but I also tell people, I said, I think I say I know what the people need, but I also want to constantly hear, I love talking to constituents. I love talking to groups. I meet with, constituents, I meet with nonprofits, I meet with organizations, I meet with people just to hear what they have to say. And I tell them, I'm like, you have a seat at my table. We need a colossal table to have everyone to sit down, but you have a seat at my table. So, I met with some union leaders recently, and I told them, I said, anytime there's anything going on in Congress in front of me about a union, I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. I'm not going to try to deal with it on my own. I'm not going to sit there and pretend that I know what's best for you. I know what's best to make this decision. I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. And, whether we sit on a Zoom call or you come down to my office on the Hill, and we talk about this, because it's not about what I think, it's about what you need. And that's what matters. And again, whether it's a union issue or, I've had this conversation talking about, police reform and, and what policing and racial justice looks like. And it's the same thing. Like I'm going to bring in, the people from the NAACP, or I'm going to bring in the ACLU to look at these issues, because that's what matters. And same with immigration. If immigration comes up, I'm going to bring in CASA. I'm going to bring in these other groups and have those conversations to make sure. I don't want to be, I'm a representative. I'm not proclaimed to be a genius. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room for all these conversations. I want the best people in my district to come in and talk to me about what they need and what they want to get it done. And, and I think step by step, little by little, we'll make some progress. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what we could get done in 2 years. But I want to try, and I want to try to see what I can get done in 2 years. And my wife will joke that I'm stubborn. And I think that is going to be my best attribute when I get to Congress is stubbornness. That
we need people who are stubborn and willing to stand their ground and die on that hill.
Yeah,
this is the hill I choose to die on. So I'm staking my flag and I'm standing.
Absolutely. And there's certain issues that I'm just, immigration is one thing, because like I said, it's personal. It's, sending of illegal immigrants and, birthright citizens, that's personal to me. I will die on that hill. I'm a survivor of a school shooting. I will die on the hill of universal background checks and red flag laws and closing the gun show loophole. And I dare, I've said this before, that I would be the first survivor of a mass shooting elected to Congress. And I dare any of the four other 434 members of the House of Representatives to look me in the eye and tell me that my lived experience does not matter to pass reform. No, I know what I went through. I know what I experienced, and it matters. It matters immensely. That's another hill that I'll die on. Medicare for all. I spent 9 years working on the ACA as a federal consultant, and I saw it firsthand. And I saw the highs, and I saw the lows, and the lows were more lows than there were highs, right? And I'm committed to fixing that. I spent 2 years working at the VA as a consultant, and I saw the dysfunction. I also saw the VA through the lens of family members who were veterans, and I saw the dysfunction there. We have to fix the VA. That's the hill I'll die on.
That's
lifelong renter.
One of my things is it's the VA.
Yeah.
My little brother is a vet. My pop was a vet. Most of my aunts are not most of my aunts. Most of my uncles are vets.
Yeah.
I almost became a Marine. I sat there after filling out all the paperwork, and the recruiters told me they wanted me to take a week and make sure this is what I really wanted, because I was also on antidepressants, and at the time you couldn't be on antidepressants and be in the armed forces. And they told me point blank, one of them said, honestly, if I could go back to when I was 18, I wouldn't have enlisted. He goes, it destroyed my mind. He goes, I will never have a peaceful night's sleep again. He goes, my advice is focus on your mental health. And that's what I ended up ultimately doing, is I chose to focus on my mental health, and decided at that point in time that going down that path was not for me. Little brother, he even now, as much as he's proud of himself, he wishes he could get back and made a different choice and started therapy sooner. So that way he doesn't have all the angry issues he has as late 30s. He's in his late 30s, and he's no longer a very angry man. He's just an angry man. But it's something I want to talk about is men's mental health.
Yes.
Allison, the way you race, let's talk about this.
Let's do this.
And this goes hand in hand with the healthcare for all, because I have heard from a lot of people, they want healthcare for all, affordability for housing, affordability for energy, and government accountability. Those are the top four things I have heard from candidates and from other people I've talked to. Is like, those are the top four things, is that everybody's concerned about in every state. So it's not something where we can go wrong talking about that, because everybody's like, oh yeah, no, we can talk. And when it comes to men's mental health and children's mental health, I know women are more likely to go get the help they need, because we are more likely to be very acutely aware of that we're not okay and we need help. And we're willing to say we need help. The issue with our society, the issue with patriarchy, and this is where a lot of it does stem from patriarchy, like it or not, let's talk about it. Because in patriarchy, men are strong, they're stoic, they're dominating, they're the boss. Women are submissive, we're delicate, we're all these things, but in reality, we're not. So when men are confronted with strong, independent women who have done the therapy, instead of looking at them going, wow, and they try to tear them down to make them less than themselves, because they themselves are not okay with who they are. They've never been taught how to process their emotions. They've always been told that having feelings is a bad thing, that having love for another man in a platonic way is a bad thing, that you cannot have male friendships where you guys hug each other and like, I love you, man. Why? Because that's not masculine.
Yeah. This is the reason I got excited when you brought this up. Is this is very timely, because I actually put out a post on my Substack this morning talking about my journey, my mental health journey, because I have OCD.
Okay.
And I started therapy about 13, 14 years ago.
So you
you're fine.
See me while I'm doing it?
Yeah. I started therapy about 13, 14 years ago, and I've seen the same therapist ever since. And one of the impetus for me at the time was the trauma and the, like a better way to call it, PTSD that I experienced it from surviving a school shooting, and the repeated fear and emotion. And it was around 2013, because I think it was the Newtown shooting of the elementary school that triggered so much of it for me and brought a flood of emotions back. and that, through over the years and time led to the diagnosis of OCD. And I had done some therapy as a child, but it's caused me to learn a lot about myself and understand that, but my vulnerabilities, right? Like, and coming to grips with who I am as a person. And I take medication, like, yeah, I take antidepressants, and I take them every day. Yeah, I take them every day, and I have for years. And I think that there's, I used to think when I started that was going to be a vulnerability, right? That was a weakness for me. But now I've come to look at it as an asset. That, like, I'm willing to accept and admit that I have limits, and I'm willing to accept and admit that my brain functions a little bit differently, and that's okay, because with therapy and with medication, I've learned how to make the most of that and the best of that. And with OCD, I joke, my brain is my greatest weapon, but it's also my greatest asset, and so that I can use it positively because I think through things and I analyze things, and I do it constantly. And so I can critique and judge and process and do all those things, which is, a massively beneficial skill, which has served me well in my life. But the therapy and the medication and going through that journey has allowed me to harness that. And so, I mean, do I have my moments where, I get tired and I'm not at my sharpest? I mean, yeah, that's everyone. Um, but the rest of the time, as a result, like, it's truly powerful for me to do that. And, confronting that, I think my wife would say has made me, a better husband, and it's made me a better father. And I still have room to grow. I mean, and I think that it's a lifelong journey. And I think people who accept and understand that about mental health is like, I'm so fortunate to have seen the same therapist for the entire time. I mean, I have such a great relationship with him. He understands me and what I go through, and he's seen me go through so much in my life. I started dealing with the trauma of witnessing and what I experienced, and he saw me through, a marriage and then a divorce. And then he saw me into another marriage and through the birth of children, and through now my congressional run and trauma and stress and every, emotion. And, years ago, I had a mental breakdown, where I just kind of stress and everything overwhelmed me, and it got too much. And, I just kind of shut down. But I built the systems, and I learned the skills, and it made me a better person. And so I see people who are struggling with their mental health, and I see that. And, the hardest step is that first step to, to own it, to say that I need help. And then once you go get that help, you get the therapy that, starts to do that. And then the medicine, which helps the therapy stick, and then you realize what's possible. And I will fight back against the stigma around mental illness, and and advocate for mental health. It's part of my journey. It's part of who I am as a person. And anyone who will try to say that I could never be a true leader because I deal with the mental, my therapist will tell me I don't say mental illness because that's a negative connotation. So he would critique me what I'm saying here to not say mental illness. But it doesn't make me any less of a person. It doesn't mean, we all have flaws. Every person's flaws is different. And, but it's about dealing with those flaws and figuring out how to enhance them and extract value from them. And that's what I've done throughout my life. And I just encourage, whether you think, but I mean, there's some people who are they're in the throes of depression or racked with anxiety, and and I understand when you're deep into it, it's hard to figure out that you need help, but reach out and ask for help. And also, even if you think that you're okay, there's no harm in finding someone to talk to. And maybe there's something there that you didn't realize. Maybe there's not. The worst case is you go to a couple sessions and you're kind of like, okay.
Okay, well, but I guess we're decent and there's not much to.
Yeah.
But that being said, one of the things my stream does, because it's nerd talk.
Yeah.
This is a TMNT spoof shirt. Okay, it says "Trust me," and I'm
Oh.
pretty sure this is Mikey. This is
Yeah.
Ooze. This one hiding his head is Donatello. This one sitting there staring absentmindedly is Leo, and that's Raph going,
This is where I admit I had
that, that's probably not a good thing.
I had TMNT bed sheets as a kid,
I
and I wish they made them in a king size because I might convince my wife to let us have them now, or she might say absolutely not.
just TMNT king size sheets. That's all you gotta Google.
Just start whispering into my phone, and her phone will start kind of searching something to search that. She would go along with Lord of the Rings.
Just be like TMNT bed sheets. That would be the one.
Oh, there she'd say absolutely not. Well, we tried. It was worth a shot to see if I could pull this off.
That I do on Nerd Talk is because here's the thing. I have a lot of passions, and people have to understand healing others. I'm a wellness coach. Is quite literally one of my main passions, has been since I was 6 years old. I wanted to either be an astronaut, an acrobat, or a massage therapist. That's what I wanted to be. I learned basic myofascial release, deep tissue and trigger point at 6 so I could work on my parents from my aunt who was an LMNT. So a massage therapist and is now a physical therapist.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, my entire life, I've wanted to heal people. I do that with my hands for work, but then there's more than just that. I have a lot of guys who come on my table, and a lot of them have started therapy in the last 2 years because I've talked to them, and we've talked because, believe it or not, trauma and emotions, they're somatic. You hold them in your muscles.
Oh, yes.
So there's times where I'm working a spot and I'm like, what are you thinking about right now? And they're like, well, just talk about that. Because as they're talking about it, that muscle area is actually releasing. Because when we work those areas, you actually start thinking about the things that cause the trauma for your body to get that tight to begin with. And I tell them, I said, listen, I do have a degree in psychology. I just am not certified as a psychologist. You need to go find somebody who that is what they do. That is all they do, is they talk to people to help them, because you have more going on than I am actually able to help you with. I can help you with the somatic part of it. I can have conversations with you. But when it comes to the therapy part, you got to find somebody who knows what they're doing. Now, when it comes to shadow work and all that stuff, I actually do know what I'm doing. I've spent 30 years in and out of therapy. I started when I was 7 because I'm bipolar, and they didn't know when I was a kid. I've been bipolar since I was 5. That's when I experienced enough trauma that it triggered everything. And unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of times when people develop OCD, bipolar, this, even autoimmune disorders like lupus and fibromyalgia are directly tied to traumatic experiences in our childhoods or our teenage years. Surprise!
Yeah, I know, right? Like but one of the things that connects all of this, and I can connect it to a legislative priority is Medicare for all, because mental health conditions, I think we underestimate, and I explain this to people. Homelessness goes back to mental health.
Oh, really? The majority of vets who are on the streets and homeless, they are there because they have some sort of CPTSD or some other trauma from the time that they spent serving. Yeah.
Drug addiction is a mental health thing, and there's so many of these things. Because like someone asked about, the opiate crisis has had some impacts in my district, because there's some very rural parts of my district that are, the Appalachian Mountains run through my district, and so some very rural communities which have been hit hard by the opiate crisis and dealing with that. And I said, well, drug addiction is a mental health issue, so we can treat the acute symptoms of opiate addiction and narcotics and things.
We have to address the underlying.
Yes.
So that's a lot of what I do with even my own health is. So once upon a time, I was on 25 prescription medications and 15 as needed daily, because we were treating the symptoms of the underlying issues, but we didn't know what the underlying issues were. We had to start peeling back the onion layers and get the symptoms under control so we could figure out what is causing all this and what's overlapping in this. So that's how I finally got the fibromyalgia diagnosis, the psoriatic arthritis, the osteospinous stenosis, which means bone spurs in my lumbar section. I have, scoliosis, lateral complication scoliosis, hyperlordosis, hyperkyphosis, spinal column narrowing. I've had neck surgery twice, and this is just from here to here. That's not everything.
Yeah. So I sympathize because I have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome.
Okay, so you because that is something that mine can actually morph into. Is Ehlers-Danlos. My mother's, she had fibro, but it morphed into mixed connective tissue disorder.
Oh, yeah.
So the health, the autoimmune disorder I have can actually evolve into something worse.
That's insane. But like, imagine a system for a minute that if we had it, that if you needed medical care, you could go get medical care and it wasn't going to cost you an arm and a leg, figuratively or literally, right? But like, it wasn't gonna, you could get the care that you needed, and it was affordable and it was available, and you didn't have to, was this in network, is this out of network, or what's my, all of these factors.
For me, my end goal, my 20-year plan, now I'm not sure where it's going to fall because I'm adding this into it, but it was to have one-stop health shops in every state, meaning that you go there, there's a GP, there's a physical therapist, there's a massage therapist, there's a chiropractor, there's a dermatologist, there's a spine doctor, all these different specialists in one building. So you can literally just schedule one day, get all your doctor appointments done, and have a good life.
There was an early on in the Affordable Care Act, there was a desire to build networks like that. And like, 'cause when I talk about healthcare as a passion, again, I spent my entire 15-year career as a federal consultant was working in healthcare. I spent Medicare, Medicaid, FDA, health insurance marketplace, ACA, for 9 years, and then 2 years at the VA working in the VA healthcare system.
You get it on that. You understand on that side of it, where I'm on the other side with in the field, the medical field itself.
Medical field, yeah. And then to add on to that, my master's thesis was researching a hospital network and understanding that. So, but yeah, early on there was an effort and a desire to build, the continuum of care, right, and how that you could transition and build these networks in these facilities. And it's never really materialized and it's never really gone anywhere. But like you were saying, like some places it is, right, where you can go into a hospital and then your primary care is part of the same network. So you go into the hospital, they can pull your records, and then when you leave and you have to go into rehab, then they get your information there, and then you have to go to this specialist, your information's there, right? And this idea of these interconnected networks and interconnected facilities, and again, you can go into one building or thing that everything is there, and you can make your appointments, or it's all when you're at your primary care and they say, hey, you need to go see your dermatologist. Well, let's just make your appointment for you here right now, and then you can get your dermatologist appointment made. You don't have to write yourself, but post-it note and come home and then figure out who you want to call, like. And yeah, that would be an ideal state to have that. And I know people, that's where some people sometimes jump in and say, well, Kaiser exists, and yes, Kaiser exists. I don't know if that's necessarily the solution ultimately in a Kaiser, but yeah, I mean, it's just we have to do better, and and it goes everywhere. The healthcare debate, I think people lose track of how critically important it is, which is why I say it's my number one thing to do is healthcare, because you look at things like, you look at education, right, and there's significant things, the studies that if you go into especially low income schools, kids who have learning disabilities, in many instances, it's actually because they can't see, right? I say, they struggle just to see, or they're dyslexic.
So my daughter, they were talking about earlier this year, holding her back because she was struggling, and I've been fighting. I finally got the appointment for the evaluation to have her tested scheduled.
Yeah.
It took 6 months for that appointment, and that's in May. I have my own in June, where we're talking about the same thing, because I'm going to be tested for ADHD to get that officially there, because I know I am. But it's one of those, like, we have been fighting since she was in the first grade to get her on an IEP. They finally did it last year with my son. They wanted him on an IEP before he hit second grade. They asked me to put him on one.
Yeah.
Where I had to fight. Why did I have to fight for my daughter when my daughter has more learning disabilities and issues than my son does?
It's, and again, it shouldn't be this hard to get those problems addressed. And, and again, people will say, well, we don't have the money to fund this. That's BS. No, we have $1 billion today to fight a war in Iran.
We're spending billions of dollars on a war that we shouldn't even be part of. If they actually put the money back into our country, back into our economy, back into us, into building us up as their people, less people would be sick. If they actually took care of our environment, less animals would be sick. By the way, I will let you know, especially if you're along the White River,
Mm.
Definitely be filtering your water even after it comes out of the tap. I swear to the goddesses, the water is what's caused 2 of my last 5 cats to passive cancer.
I mean,
Here's the
it's
thing: is I've actually
things like that.
called in
Yeah.
Indiana along it the in multiple different places trying to see if anyone would answer my questions. I finally got few to answer them, but it basically came down to is I just wanted to know what they used for their measurement to deem whether or not the chemical levels in the water were adequate for human consumption. And they told me they based it off of a 150-pound 6-foot person. So tell me how many people actually fit that mold. The vast majority of them are going to be men. So
Yeah.
they're saying if you're 150 pounds and you're 6 foot tall, the chemicals in the river are adequate for consumption. I'm 5'9" and 135 pounds, so they're not
Yeah.
adequate for consumption. My children are barely over
Yeah.
100 pounds and definitely not 6. Well, he's 6 foot now, but
Yeah.
still, my cat.
Yeah.
No, my cat.
Yeah.
They're the biggest one is 24 pounds. She's a monster.
Yeah.
But cats are usually 10 to 12 pounds. I got 2
Yeah.
that fit that mold. The last 2 that died were 10 to 12 pounds.
Yeah. And it's the fact that that information is so hard to get, right? That information should be freely available, readily available, and it's hidden, it's buried by layers, and sometimes it's and it's a will. It's a desire to do that, and those places lack the desire. And again, I know for some, and then this is not a universal statement because for some places it is a funding
Yeah.
issue, and I understand that. But there's a lot of places it's not a funding issue. It's just that they don't want to. Maybe they don't want to expose themselves. Maybe they don't want to put themselves out there. They don't want to run the risk of looking bad. If you're worried about looking bad when you're providing an essential service like water, then we have a problem, and that problem could be fixed. And
So part of the
you know,
problem is back after Trump put 2 people into the Supreme Court, they started undoing all these laws that were unconstitutional, quote unquote.
yeah, yeah,
Unconstitutional for who? Because here's some of those laws. In 2018, they rolled back the law that made it so if your company had an oil spill, a chemical spill, anything like that, you were on the hook for cleaning up. Not only did you have to pay a $150,000 fine, you had to fully fund the entire cleanup operation. The government, in turn, would help to fund a portion of it. Cool. They
yeah.
overturned that law saying it was unconstitutional, and now all they have to do is pay a non-monetary $15,000 fine, and they don't have to worry about cleaning it up. Because
Surrounding air.
the
Yeah.
chemicals will be out of the groundwater in 7 to 15 years.
I have advocated for making the EPA a cabinet, department.
That's the other thing that really pisses me off, because a few weeks ago they passed a law that says that the state EPA laws cannot be more stringent than the federal government.
I saw, yeah, that they're targeting California for that one. It's a and I think that's what so much is like these personal vendettas that he has against governors. I mean, I live living in Maryland. Um, that's a personal one, right? Because he hates Wes Moore. What went on in Minnesota is obviously a direct attack at Tim Walz.
Well,
You know,
Vermont's against Bernie Sanders.
Vermont against Bernie Sanders, Illinois is against Pritzker.
Multiple times.
Yeah, Illinois is against Pritzker, and New York is against. Well, he has this weird love affair with Mamdani. So it used to be for AOC, and Schumer, but maybe he's warmed on Mamdani. But if it's Newsom in California, but yeah, I mean the environmental issues are, like I said, I propose making the EPA a cabinet department, an equivalent agency to be able to have the regulatory teeth and the funding and the means to go about it and address these issues because, like you were saying, I mean the future is for our children, and I want my kids to have a planet that I recognize. I don't want to hit 2050 and the world that I'm living in and they're living in and maybe my grandchildren are living
You're
in.
living longer, so I'm 41. I'm gonna
Yeah,
be around for another 40 to 50 years.
same here. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I would like to enjoy the next few decades
I
of my life
would
rather
too.
than struggle like I've done the last few decades of my life.
I would too. And like I said, and I think some of these fixes are not, I'm going to say not hard, and they are hard, but they're not as hard as you might think. It's just a will and a desire to make it done. And I've said that, right? It's like it's a political will, and they don't want to expend their capital. They want to, but what are they? They're not expending. So many members of Congress do not expend political capital on everything, and it's just it's it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it's not a challenge for them to go in and make these decisions and make the hard choices to solve these problems. If they wanted to, they could, and they're not. And
wherever there's a will, there's a way. If somebody wanted to make it happen, it would happen, period. They don't want to make it happen. That's why they drag their feet and they do anything other than because they don't want to.
Well, and I think the thing that I've joked,
it's just
the thing, yeah, the thing I've joked about is you have to convince them how to profit off some of these things. Right, and I'm a member of the DSA, and so obviously I have strong feelings on capitalist greed and all of that. But some of these issues they can't figure out how to profit off of, and so they don't want to do it because they can't. I was talking with someone the other day who was asking me about solving VA benefit issues and missing records. And I said, if they could profit off of resolving a backlog of people who have been denied benefit claims because of missing information as a result of the fire at the records or annex in Missouri, if they could profit off of that, it would be fixed. That would be done, but they can't profit off of that. And so,
because you shouldn't be profiting off of being in Congress or in the Senate. You should not profit off of that. Period.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not going to say if you walk out of that office millions of dollars richer than when you walked in, there is a problem there. There's a huge problem there.
Yeah, and it's just insane because again, that's a huge issue. I mean, there are people who are veterans who were exposed to. I mean, we still have Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange, and now we've got Iraq and Afghani war veterans who are exposed to burn pits, who are dealing with serious medical issues, and they can't always get access to the benefits that they need because of whatever dysfunction in the VA. And again, there's not enough political will and political motivation to resolve it and fix that.
It took 2 years for my brother to find a health or a mental therapist through the VA.
It's just not right. It's just not, and honestly, this sounds bad to say, but that's actually even not that bad.
I know.
And
I've heard people talk about worse, and I'm like, I understand for what that's worth. That's a short time because I have a friend who took 5 years to find somebody who would actually talk to him and understood where he was coming from.
Exactly, and I think, but that's what's so depressing about it is because when you say 2 years is not that bad, it's actually not, and that's too long.
Yeah,
it should be 2 weeks
at the most.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just it's awful. And and I've talked to some doctors who talked to one of my doctors recently who about running, and he was like, well, so you're for Medicare for all? And I was like, yeah, exactly. And he was like, I have some reservations about it. And I was like, I know a lot of doctors do about what it could do to them and the impacts, but I kind of joked with them and I said, your patients are going to be healthier. Your patients are going to be happier because they're healthier, and it'll work out
because they're healthier. So you probably only have to see them once, maybe twice a year because they caught a cold.
Yeah, and this is a doctor he's a specialist, but he's ridiculously, when you make an appointment with him, you book 10 months out. And I was like, you're not going to have to book 10 months out on your schedule anymore. And I didn't quite sell him with that pitch, but he was at least open to it. The idea, he's not opposed to it, but he's like, I do have some concern. Again, change is not easy, and I understand people get afraid of change, and they get afraid of what is it going to mean, and with government, and we talk about change, how we're going to pay for it, right? And but we have it's things like, again, we can spend $1 billion a day on a war in Iraq. We can request 200 billion. I mean, I've used this now a couple of times. I'm an advocate of free school breakfasts and lunches, and the annual cost is estimated to be about $40 billion. So when they requested $200 billion for the war in Iran, that's 5 years of breakfasts and lunches for every kid in America.
Or when they gave $40 billion to Argentina, they could have fed our entire country's children for a year.
Exactly, right? So it's again, it's and like, how many years has the Pentagon failed its audits? Like 20 plus years has the Pentagon failed its audits, and the bloated defense budgets and agencies, and I sound a little maybe like Doge when I say that there is. I mean, and I think there's a reality. I think there's some waste in government that
There
could be
absolutely is,
trimmed.
but I don't think they'd actually cut the waste. I think
No, they didn't, and that's the thing.
in order to put us in a position where all we have is the choice of, well, whatever he chooses to do, because there's nobody else to hold him in checks and balances.
Well, and it's the joke of a chainsaw. It's not a chainsaw; it's a scalpel. It's very surgical to make some of those cuts, and it's not this just broad sweeping thing that they did. But I think that there's a lot of things that can be done to bring those costs, but then there's people sit there and say 2017 Tax Cuts and Job Act lowered the corporate tax rate from 35% down to 21%. If we raised it from 21 to 28 and closed some of the most commonly exploited loopholes by Fortune 500 companies, we estimate we could raise $100 billion a year. $100 billion. That is not touching.
Business owner, do it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Do it.
And that's just that. That is not, and then we could, a wealth tax, right? And there's different means.
We need the wealth tax because, and I was even listening to the CEO of what was it, Saxman Gold, where he was talking about the fact that you need to tax the rich. He was even saying, please tax me, because what's going to happen is if we don't tax the rich, eventually the poor are going to rise up and they're going to fight back and they are going to eat the rich. And some of us are going to lose our lives. Just look at the United Healthcare CEO. He goes, that was just the beginning. You need to tax the rich before the poor.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
well,
that man gets it.
It's James Tallarico in Texas was the first person I heard say this. And it's not about left versus right. It's about top versus bottom.
It is always true.
Now, I think,
and I think that I've known since the 90s. It's never been left versus right. It's never been red versus blue. It's been the people who have money against everybody else, because the people who have money are manipulating the market to make it look like it's red versus blue.
And it's this, the more that we fight, the more that we fight, the better off that they are, because then we're not questioning what they're doing. Right. And I think the reality that a lot of them are seeing is that a lot of Americans are waking up to this, right? Mm-hmm. And, and then you have this whole generation of, because you said you're 41, I'm about to turn 38 next week. And so we were close in age. And so like our generation, we're not falling for this, maybe that like older generations did. And we see through this. And I'm, it's one of the things is like, I'm committed. I don't care who it is or how much money they have. If they come and sit in front of me in Congress, I'm going to ensure that they're held accountable. And I'm going to make sure, that the billionaires, they have to pay their fair share. All of them have to pay their fair share. And as they say, billionaires, but it's a wealth tax. Yeah. I mean, there's a massive wealth inequality in this country.
$1 million a year, anything over that can be taxed at a much higher rate. Because you know what? That right there is still more than you probably could spend in 10 lifetimes.
And that is both of my opponents right there who fall into that bucket. And, it's funny because the incumbent Representative McLean Delaney has proposed a billionaire tax, not a wealth tax. And I know that's because she's trying to protect herself.
Because she falls just underneath there. Whereas my other opponent, David Trone, the billionaire, has not said anything on anything, because of course he's going to be taxed either way. But it's honestly, billionaires, people who have multi-million dollars, people who make more in 1 year than most people could spend in 10 lifetimes. Yeah. You need to understand that you don't need the wealth. It is purely just avarice and greed at that point. You are not going to leave anything for anybody. All you're going to do is you're going to leave this life with a huge set of money that you can't take anywhere with you.
Yeah, absolutely. My David Trone, his first media buy on this campaign was more money than I've made in my entire career up to this point.
I believe it. Because
1.8 million is what he spent in his first media. He put $5.5 million of his own I should also preface this. David Trone, the reason he's running for this seat, he actually used to be the representative prior to Representative McLean Delaney, stepped down to run for Senate in Maryland to challenge now Senator Angela also Brooks in the Democratic primary. He spent almost $63 million of his own money on the primary and lost. So this man owns the number one most expensive house race in United States history and the number one most expensive Senate race, self-funded in United States history. He has spent over $100 million of his own money, personal money, self-funding his political campaigns. And again, he's plunked $5.5 million into this one already. And again, we'll see the latest round of disclosures, but yeah, last he had spent, and one buy from one company, one payment, just under $1.8 million for, which makes sense why I get like 3 flyers a week from him in the mail.
The reason why I believe that there should be caps on how much money that can be raised for campaign, because
Yeah.
and here's the thing, this is the problem with people who have a lot of money. They don't know how to budget.
Yeah.
They have no idea what it means to have to budget and balance their checkbook, because they never have to double check to see how much money they have in their account before they make a purchase. They never do.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem, because again, let's just say for 50,000, let's cap it at 50,000. If you cannot campaign and win your race in your district for $50,000, you have to spend more than that. There's a problem with you and how you budget.
Yeah. And I think some of them too are going to the DNC playbook. I know this is relevant because the DNC just released a new playbook, but they're going to the old DNC playbook of how to do it. But the reality is, I've raised a mere fraction of what they're spending, and the race is competitive.
Yeah.
And what does that say, about that? It's the methods are tired. I'm seeing that they're spending $50,000 on Facebook ads, right, and their engagement on their posts sucks, relative to mine,
And then you have me sending this to you afterwards so you can clip videos and post them.
Yeah.
It'll be on my YouTube, and I'll be posting things, and then I'll have you on again so we can keep the conversation going. Here's my
exactly. But I have more followers than any of them on TikTok. I have more followers than any of them on Instagram. I have more followers than any of them on Threads, which are the 3 most active platforms. On Threads, I have 2,700 followers, but my monthly views, my 30-day views is 1.4 million.
That's amazing. So that tells you out to the people, and this is my way of giving some free advertisement. And
I love this. I love
somebody goes, I feel like you're working for my campaign. You volunteered. I'm like, honestly, I feel like I volunteered for everybody's campaign that comes on here, because part of my goal is, okay, if you get the seat, guess what? Congratulations. I'm holding you accountable. We will be continuing conversations, because
I expect it.
Because here's the thing. That's what I've decided to do, is we want accountability in the government. That is literally on here to talk about, is government accountability. And the best way to keep people accountable is, okay, let's just have another hour and a half conversation. Let's talk about what you're doing. Let's talk about the office. Let's actually find out more about you and make sure you are doing what you said you're going to do. Because if you're not, it'll be like, Ethan, why did you not do what you said you were going to do? Let's have a conversation about this, because I want to know. I'm not happy right now.
I've thought people pick up the phone and yell at me. They're like, really? And I was like, yeah, go ahead, pick up the phone and yell at me. If I screw you over, if I've led you astray, I've done the wrong thing, yell at me and tell me what I did wrong. And they most likely was not intentional, but I did you wrong, and you deserve to let me know, because and it's, I don't plan to, already in this race, my opponents are doing scripted, interviews and town halls, or I don't know if they're calling town halls, question and answer sessions. Because town hall implies an open format, and back and forth. So they're doing Q&As, but the questions are pre-approved. And I don't do pre-approved questions. I don't do.
Are there any topics you want to talk about? Because I'm going to my list, because it's
and that's why I always tell people that ask me the questions. I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to talk about these things. And because you have to be, and you have to be willing to be open and honest and be held accountable as a politician and as a representative. And if you're not, then what do you do? I mean, what do you do? And it's this interesting thing in this race, holding my opponent accountable. I got attacked. So Representative April McLean Delaney, her husband is a former representative himself, John Delaney, who actually held this seat before David Trone. There's a lot of nepotism in this district. And they're actually not the first husband and wife pair to hold this seat in this district. They're not the second.
Oh, wow.
They're the third husband and wife pair. So we have a long history of nepotism. And I will preface this, if there's any MDO6 voters who watch this. that my wife has no interest in running for Congress whatsoever, so you don't have to worry about that with us. But her husband, again, a former U.S. representative, current chairman of a bank, called me a misogynist for criticizing her because I was holding her accountable for her horrible votes. She voted for the Laken Riley Act, and I'm holding her accountable for that and not letting that one go because I shouldn't let it go. But he called me a misogynist in his Valentine's Day post to her. He called me a misogynist for attacking her.
So romantic.
I know, and it's like you are, and this to me also shows that what this race is. This this man is again worth several $100 million. Former representative, ran for president, didn't go anywhere with it. And the fact that he's out on X on Valentine's Day calling me a misogynist, like what is going on in your life, friend? Like that's
for holding someone accountable for their votes regardless of their gender.
Yeah. So I'm convinced that I live in their head, rent free, and I'm here for it.
They are thinking about you all the time.
Yeah, if that's what he's thinking about on Valentine's Day and his professing his love to his wife is that, her misogynistic opponent.
He's not thinking about his wife, he's thinking about you.
Yeah, exactly. So I take that and I run with that because people, ask me, well, how do you think you're doing in the race? And I tell them stories like that and they're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I was like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, right? Why haven't we seen polling in 4 months?
Yeah.
Because there's no positive polling that they have to tell, and then I hear little rumors of, well, she's saying privately this, that, or the other. And I'm like, if she's saying it privately, she's not saying it publicly.
Yeah, she's saying it privately because she knows it probably won't come true. If she were saying it publicly, then people could hold her accountable if it fell through. But that's just it. She doesn't want to embarrass herself.
Well, the private rumor, and now I someone had told me this recently, and then I heard it. I checked it with someone else that has this been circulating, is that she claims that she's polling 15 points ahead of David Trone. Now, if this was the case, she's a very a polite way to say this. She's thinks very highly of herself. I'll say it that way. So if this was the case, she was pulling that high.
All over the place.
It's the Sound of Music. She would be dancing in the hills and doing that, which leads me to believe that it's either not true or she may be pulling 15 points ahead of him, but she's pulling behind someone else. And she doesn't want to talk about that. I don't know. And I don't know. I have no clue, right? This is speculation, right?
She could be pulling 1 point ahead of you and doesn't want to know that you guys are neck to neck.
Exactly, right? And that's the other option, right? Is that, she's we're neck and neck and she doesn't want to talk about that. But either way, she's just not talking about it.
Right.
She's not putting it out there. And she put out one in December. She was very proud of it. Oh, this. And then her husband's on there boasting about how they know the owner of the polling company. And then they are just going on and on about this. And the methodology that was used is flawless. And this. Yeah, exactly. And we haven't seen anything since. So all that flowery language around that poll, and here we are that was mid-December.
And now we are beginning of April.
And we have not seen anything. So I take that positively in this race.
And in certain ways, there's ways to look at it. Like you could take it as, well, you could be neck and neck, but I would take it as, you know what? She's not putting it out there because it's not what she wants. There's somebody else that's either beating her or is neck and neck with her, and she doesn't want to talk about that because then that admits she actually has a chance of losing. She's not just, I'm 15 points ahead and everybody else doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. If she was 15 points ahead of all of us, she again
with people like that. And trust me when I say, if she were in the lead, she'd be making sure everybody knew she was in the lead. She's not.
Yeah. So, if it's neck and neck, I will take that. I will take that. But it's just there's a lot at stake, and I know what they've done. I know the tactics. I hold them accountable. I call them out. I call them both out on decisions and votes. Because they both have legislative records. They both have things they can go after, and then they both say things in public David Trone was just this past week asked about would he join with, Bernie Sanders and, blocking bombs to Israel. And he said, well, I'll never stop supplying arms to Israel. Like, okay, cool. I see where you stand there, David. I see. Yeah.
Because that's the problem. So AIPAC, for people who don't know, that stands for American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Now, there's also now a second one that is pro-Israel. It's called J Street, and they've really taken up in Utah and Arizona, but they're spreading up from there. I know this because I was talking to some of the representatives who are running in Arizona who know AIPAC money. They've signed things saying they will not take AIPAC, they will not take J Street, they will not take pro-Israel money because they don't want those tentacles wrapped around them, so they're forced to vote in favor of Israel fighting Iran and us being there, because we should not be in there. When you have the director of counterterrorism resigning because we should not be in there, and he's telling everybody there are no weapons of mass destruction. They haven't even started rebuilding their nuclear program yet.
Yeah.
There's no
Iran has been 2 weeks away from a nuclear weapon for the last 30 years.
Like,
there's
nothing there. They dismantled the program and they haven't restarted it again. Why? Because they didn't want to be bombed.
Exactly. There's and again, like as we talked about, the insidious aspects of money and corruption that flow with all of it. But like I said, I hold my opponents accountable. I don't attack them just for the sake of attacking them, because there's no merit in that and there's no value in that. They do enough on their own to make themselves look bad that I don't really have to. And I also think, voters don't want to see that dirty politics. They don't, there's no,
You're tired of the slandering and it's like, cool, great. And your point, why don't you tell us what you're going to do for us instead of telling us why that person's so bad?
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I always try to do, is always try to remind people, this is what they've done and here's what I'm going to do that's different, that's going to have a positive impact on you and make things better for you. And and I think that's the message that's resonated across the board. And and again, like, they just take up some puzzling positions, which shows how out of touch they are with people, and how out of touch they are with the constituents. And some of these issues that they've taken sides on are incredibly polarizing. One of the big ones in our district right now is data centers and the build out of data centers. Yes.
That was on the list because, oh my good Lord, do you know how many representatives in various different states I've talked to about data centers? I mean, it's big in Indiana, it's big in Kentucky, it's big in...
it's huge in Indiana, because there's that big one that's the Amazon facility, right? That's being built in Indiana.
Indiana. I'm not happy about any of this. Fortunately, they're not building anywhere near where I live, because we already deal with noise pollution. And that's the part that's going to make it significantly worse, is the noise pollution in Indiana, especially in the spots where they're building the data centers, is already bad. Because they're putting them near airports, they're putting them near, electrical facilities, they're putting them near power plants. So it's already bad. And then they're saying, on top of that, in Indiana, this is where I love the differences in states. In Indiana, they passed a law stating that the data centers get tax breaks, and the citizenry is actually on the hook for their power usage. So we have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's the problem.
They don't.
Yeah, so there's two main locations in my district where they've been building data centers. One of them, there's already some data centers that have been built. And I should preface this, that we are in this area, we are right across the Potomac River from Loudoun County, and Loudoun County is the data center capital of the world. So as the land has been used, they're looking to expand, because there's also a lot of existing sites and facilities, and so they've expanded across the Potomac River into Maryland.
That's what they're doing in Virginia. I was talking to Erica. They're trying to build a data center. So here's her house, like 5 blocks down is the line, and then like 10 blocks from that, they're trying to build a data center. And I'm like, that's like less than a mile from your house. She's like, it's about half, 3/4 to a mile.
And they're trying all sorts of tactics. And like the one that they're building in Frederick County in my district, well, they took this old factory site and they torn the factory down. And they're saying, well, it's already zoned industrial, we're doing this. But, the construction and the impacts, and people in there are experiencing, significant impacts from the construction. And then, there's been a lot of closed door dealings about expanding the site and doing more. And in Montgomery County, where I live, that there's a old coal-fired power plant that has been shut down, and they're going to tear that down. A company wants to tear that down and come in. But then there's a lot of questions about the initial plans. Well, then a different company has taken over, and the additional company over one that's taken over has changed the plans. And you have county council members who are advocating that they should be grandfathered in because the other one had tentatively been approved, even though the plans have changed substantially. The original plans had no backup diesel generators. The new plans have backup diesel generators.
And let's talk about that in just a second.
Yeah, and so they're trying to they're doing it, but this is on the banks of the Potomac River, which is a precious resource in this area. And their water permit that they're going for is 500,000 gallons of water a year. But then they're like, we're only going to use 70,000 at most. It's not really going to be that bad. If you're only going to use 70,000, why are you applying for 500,000? You're applying for 500,000 because you think you might use it at some point. And then in that area, because there's infrastructure from the power plant, there's a big ash field site that's right there from the ash. And I was just actually over there a couple of days ago. There's already existing, transformers and high voltage power lines. And there's one site you can stop on the roads, this kind of back road, because it's kind of a rural area where they're building this. You sit there and park into the power lines. I got out of my car and you just hear them buzzing, just to hear the sound. And I'm thinking the power lines are doing this. Then the data center is going to do it.
Where we learned where I don't actually have tinnitus. I just hear the electricity
it's the buzzing
all the time. And I was a kid and people were telling me, you can't hear that, you can't hear. Yes, I can. And then as I got older, my mom realized, because she took me to the ENT, and ENT goes, she doesn't have tinnitus. She genuinely hears electricity. The only time I don't hear that buzzing is I have to be in the middle of a field that is at least 5 miles from any electrical source. Cars turned off, phones turned off, no electricity, nothing that has any battery impulse going. And it's finally quiet.
It's a relief, the sweet relief. Yeah.
And it's just,
it's
nice.
And I think that's my concern is that, they're putting these in, I see someone left in the comment, the Frederick one is close to elementary school, which is right. And that part of Frederick is the more rural part of Frederick too. And actually, I know there was an industrial plant there, but it's still a more rural part. And so now we're starting to tear down farmlands. We're starting to look into historic parts of our communities too. And it's never going to stop at just one. And I think that's what I know about this site in Montgomery County is they're not going to just build one there. It's not going to.
For $500,000 in water, then what they're going to do is they're going to start with one that only uses 70,000. But oh God, there's so much flow. Expand and make it bigger.
Exactly.
So the complex is a campus that uses $500,000. Well, it'll probably be more than in a year because this is where I was going to talk about the hyperscale ones that we have out here.
Yep.
So hyperscale means anything that uses over 400 megawatts of energy usage. So we have, let me see. Okay. So in Indiana, we currently have 30 to 40 hyperscale projects in production right now. Because of all the tax breaks they were given, the high-tech infrastructure they were promised we would build for them, and the fact that the citizenry is now on the hook for their energy usage for X amount of years. In addition to that, the environmental impact. So that was what I was trying to look into for Maryland, is to find out what your energy grid was. If you guys use a lot of fossil fuels, if you use thermal, if you use this, if you use that, because it's very different based on each state. In Indiana is heavily dependent on fossil fuels. So natural gas and coal. So because of everything going on, we have the coal industry is lobbying the Indiana House of Representatives, so their Congress and Senate, to keep coal factories open longer, to refurbish them, and to open new ones in order to keep our power grid going. But they don't want to use clean coal because clean coal is not all that clean, believe it or not. They just
it's great marketing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I actually went through and read the entire way they do clean coal, but there's still so many emissions from clean coal. It's not healthy. But we're talking, the air and the climate pollution, which is already not great, getting worse to the point where we talked about the EPA earlier. They don't have to care about various different particles in the air anymore. They don't have to measure it. They don't have to monitor it. They don't have to put filters and screenings on it anymore, because guess what? When they rolled back everything, they said for carbon emissions, a lot of those, the coal, we don't have to care. As long as the state carbon emissions is under X amount, we're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see someone left the comment about the
Should get
plant where they're
taxed.
building is a decommissioned smelter. Yeah, there's environmental concerns at the site. So Maryland imports about 40% of our electricity. And I think that number has gradually increased over the years. So we're inching close to actually being a net importer of electricity, which is not a good look. Some of that is due to regulatory issues with approving and building new power production facilities. And I think most of our well, I don't even want to say. I don't know where most of the. I think we get some power. Some of it comes from Pennsylvania. So we have a mix of nuclear, which comes in, I think, primarily through Pennsylvania. But there's a grid alliance of some Mid Atlantic states, and so how that does. So I don't, totally know the makeup. I know the power utility that I have where I live, we can see the makeup and composition of power, and it's just a weird makeup. There's a chunk of nuclear, there's a chunk of natural gas, there's a chunk of coal, there's a chunk of hydroelectric, and then there's a small percentage of wind, because there's actually a lot of wind turbines in Pennsylvania as well, on some of the ridges there. But Maryland has tried to fix that. But, like you were saying, I saw Meta's building a big data center campus in Louisiana. 7 natural gas power plants are going to be coming online to do that. And that's what we have to avoid. And, one of the things I've talked about with data centers, and I wrote an article about this, is that they have the will, they have the ability. It's going back to, again, political will, right? They have the corporate will, the technical will to figure out greener and more environmentally friendly ways to do this.
On top of that, so one of the things I liked, and I don't understand why every state can't do this. Kentucky actually passed a law when it came to data centers. Oh, Kentucky, I am so surprised. So for such a backward state, you were leading the way. I even said that to, what was it, Erin? Yeah, I even said that to Erin when she was on. She goes, I know, right? So they put a law in place for data centers stating that there is now a high load factor tariff, meaning that data centers have to pay for 80 to 85% of their contracted usage for up to 15 years based on their contract. And they are responsible for building power plants that generate the same, if not more, energy than they use. They have to build the facility to power their own plants so that it doesn't tap the Kentucky power grid. And that way the Kentucky would pay more for their energy.
I would take that a step further. I would say it has to be 100%. And that's what I would look at. Like they should fully pay for all of their utility usage, power, water. I would also advocate for no backup diesel generators. I mean, they can solve this,
because like Fort Wayne has 36 backup generators. They are 6,000 gallon diesel backup generators. If they ever kick on, the amount of just carbon dioxide, the amount of pollution they will generate into the air just by going on.
Here's the thing about that. With most states, and I don't know about Indiana, but in Maryland, there are regulations that allow them to test those generators daily and run them for a certain amount of time. So again, they're backup generators. You think, well, they're not going to ever go on unless there's a need. No, they test them daily and can run them. And that's in a lot of states, that's the issue, is that the diesel backup generators are actually running every day in some measure to do those checks and polluting and creating that. The conversation that I told to someone is that big tech and these companies love to shame us about we need to be more green. We need to, I've got LED light bulbs. We've got paper straws, stainless steel straws. I've got my, drink here and a tumbler, all these things we do to be more green. And then they turn around and do this and fly around on their, private jets and do all of this and burn all of this. And so they can figure these problems out.
Everything that the citizenry is trying to do to help our planet. I finally, after 6 years of it being broken, got my EVAP system fixed. I had to pay $3,000 because it wasn't just one small issue. It ended up being, first it was the purge valve. Then it turned out to be the charcoal canister had a hole in it. Then it was a hole in the rubber hose that attached to the charcoal canister. And then after that, they couldn't figure out why the light was still on. So I took it back in, and they ended up taking and doing the smoke test reversed and started in the gas chamber. And when they did that, they found out I had a leak in my fuel line because it was a small leak and then it wasn't a small leak. And then they got,
Yeah.
and it was the catalytic converter. It was also leaking
Yeah.
and had smoke coming out. So I'm like, okay, $3,000 later, my car is finally running, but instead of barely getting 220 miles to a tank, I'm going to get closer to 400.
Yeah.
$3,000 to do that. It was not a
Yeah.
fix I can afford again in any time in the near future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
But it's
more green and save money because the gas pump now is going to hurt. Hey, I'll tell you this, it's probably going to save me $3,000 in the next year because of the fact that I drive for my work. So I'm a licensed
yeah.
therapist. I go to
Yeah.
people's homes with my table, or I take my chair and I do events. Like I'm doing this actually the 23rd through the 26th of this month. I'll be in Indianapolis working on people doing chair massage, dressed up in cosplaying. It's gonna be fun.
Oh, nice. That's
I
cool.
get paid
I
to
like
dress
that.
up as a half elf
That's
from the
awesome.
Fey realms and be
Yeah.
all gaudy and me and rub people and have fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's the best job ever. I love being my own boss.
Yeah. I felt this because I travel all over, the district, and today I paid 4.89 a gallon. Now my car takes I have an SUV and it takes premium gas. Thankfully, our other car is a hybrid, a small sedan hybrid that gets a lot higher gas mileage.
I
Thank God, and I've been driving that
1
more.
to a
Yeah,
gallon. Like I have a
yeah,
small little
that's
Nissan Versa. It's my little
yeah,
mom car. I love
yeah.
it because it gets fantastic great mile. It gets great gas mileages, and I can actually fit everything I need to in my car if I do
There you go.
this
Yeah.
just right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I have a like I said, a small sedan that is a high. So I get, if it's mostly highway driving, which again I'm driving around the district, a lot of it is, and I'm getting upper 30s to low 40s and gas mileage too. But it hurts, and it hurts, and when you're privileged enough to still be able to afford it, and it still hurts. I think of all of these people for whom they're having to make calculated decisions about where they drive and what they do. Can they afford it? And then I all of these smug people who are like, well, yeah, I have my Tesla. And I'm like, yeah, but our power bills are creeping up, buddy.
Yeah.
Like, your power bills aren't that cheap right now either. So your Tesla's not charging it that much better, so go ahead, charge your Tesla,
Right,
right? And
and
you're
here
paying
soon
for it at
it's
the
going to be more
grid.
expensive to have a Tesla than it is to have a little Versa.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So and I think that's the thing. And I've talked about like all of these little issues and the affordability aspects of it, and the need for accountability. And there's so many things, and I think some of them, they link together in many ways, and some more so than others. But there's a lot of elements and a lot of aspects that I think, and I've used the metaphor of a snowball. You start at the top of the hill and it rolls down the hill, and eventually it's an avalanche. And I think that's what it's going to be with some of this. And I have in my head where I'd like to start. I think Medicare for all is one of the biggest things. I wanted to put it out there. I want the debate to get started because it's not going to be. I put
I
it
will
on day
tell
one. It's going
you
to get past day three.
honestly, if you get elected and all these people, I will tell you the list of here's who you need to work with because they want Medicare or Medicaid or something for
Yes.
all. They want health insurance
Yes.
for all. So let's get you
Yeah.
guys together so you can start that conversation.
Yes.
Because
Yeah. Absolutely.
part of the
Yeah.
solution, I've already decided I will be part of the solution. Part of my solution is okay. I've had people go, Shadow, why don't you just run for office? I could. Let's be honest, I'll
Yeah.
probably win. I'm a very charismatic person and I can. That's what people want. But that's not me. And I'm not that
Yeah.
person to sit behind a desk for 2, 4, 6 years pushing papers and try. No, I am the
My
person.
wife and I talk about this, that that I'm the one running, not her. And but there's so many, there are so many great people, and I tell people that because I've had people met me like, oh, like I love your policies, and but I worry you won't be able to do it because you're just one person. And I said, okay, well, that's valid concern,
You're just one
but
person.
there's a lot of
So
them.
let me tell you the other 10 people that have the same idea as you.
Yes, exactly. And I tell them that, and I say, there's got to get as many of us elected as possible across the country to start having those conversations and making that happen. And again, like I said, like my one constituent who told me that you talk about your everyday agenda, and it is an everyday agenda, and we have to start that and put those things out there to have that conversation and start moving it forward. Because if how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, right? Like none of these things are going to be easy, but when we start, and I am a proponent, and some people might say differently, rather than these big, massive bills of trying to cram 40 things into it, one bill, one issue at a time. When I'm talking about
one item per bill. Sorry, one item per bill.
No, it's 100%. I'm
the people who agree with that.
Yeah, someone was talking, about gun control, and I said, well, I don't. The sole reason gun control bills have not, the reason they've failed is not because they crammed multiple things into one bill. There's many reasons why gun control legislation has failed, but I'm talking about if I'm going to pass universal background checks, it's going to be a bill, universal background checks. That's it, nothing more. Red flag laws, separate bill. Gun show loophole, separate bill. It's we're gonna break it apart, and if I have to pass. I'm not trying to set any records here, but if I have to pass 17 bills to get, gun control legislation passed, then I'll pass 17 bills to get it passed.
17 bills because we need to stop combining them because then you have perfect example, the funding of DHS. So we're on a lockdown because they can't agree on what they're going to do. Well, you know what? Great. Let's separate it out. And have 5 different budgets. And that way it's for each different department. That way we can
exactly.
Let's fund that. Let's fund TSA. Now we got to sit down and we got to discuss Department of Homeland Security because we are not okay with this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's just and again, it's different ways, it's different approaches to doing this, and and none of these are not secrets. It's not like I came up with something that no one has ever thought of before. And I think that's what's troubling with a lot of the current climate is that there's a lot of this. It's like you just have to think outside the box a little bit, and
they're gonna pass what? The budget?
Oh, they're gonna pass the funding, for DHS. Yeah, it's not gonna. It's dead on the Senate, and it's there's just the way that we've approached things in government has been backwards, and we're reaching a new age. The country's evolved, the country's changed, the country's shifted, and we have to take those new approaches, and that means new people who are willing to try new things and not be afraid that we're going to break it. And
if we do break it, we are going to make it better.
Exactly, right. Sometimes, you gotta, how to make an omelet, you gotta break a few eggs, right? And I understand, I've heard people sit there and say, well, those are scary expressions when you talk about running for Congress because those are people's lives that you're gambling with. And I don't take that lightly. I don't, because it is people's lives when I say, people have said the expression, it's like, well, some people say, well, we need to set fire to it and burn it all down. And I've even, said that at times in the past. And that's terrifying to people because
we need to just raise it all to the ground and start over.
Yeah. And I'm not sitting here saying that we're going to do that with no plan and everyone's going to be in limbo until we fix it. No, if we did that, we would make sure that continuity and that things continue. And I'm not, me saying that, I am committed to making sure that no one suffers, no one is impacted, no one is hurt if that's the case, right? If we have to tear something down to rebuild it, everyone will be taken care of, and that's that has to happen to do that. But it may be that that's what we have to do on some of these things, and again, going back to political will and political capital, there's no will, and people don't want to expend the capital to do that because, and it's like the DHS argument. I'm a favor of abolishing DHS.
Period.
Yeah. I say abolish ICE, but I also say abolish DHS because most of DHS is a fear-driven agency. And it was born out of that. DHS is was it 2003? So it's 23 years old. They're barely drinking age. Over there in DHS, and it's not some revered public institution that it can't be touched. And I think that's the problem is that we just don't want to. They're afraid to, and so we have to think about these things. And I honestly don't care whether it's a department that's been around 23 years or 2,300 years. I don't have any here like that, right? But it doesn't matter if there's fundamental flaws and there's issues that need to be fixed, and that means you have to start over. Then you start over, and so what? If the end result is, and I go back to something, and I am a nerd too, Shadow. I
love it.
I study political.
Here's the thing: is everybody is a nerd, even if they don't realize it. They're just a closet.
Exactly.
Because this is what I tell all my jock friends. Fantasy football is just D&D for jocks.
It's nerdy. It's just accept it.
Congratulations, you are a nerd. You have a passion about it. Don't we all?
Yes, exactly. 100%. I was a political science major in college, and I've always studied that. And the thing about our government that our founding fathers never meant for us to still have the same constitution 200 years later. There was a generational document, and it, that I go to the, I grew up in Virginia, and so in Virginia, obviously, you spent a lot of time studying, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and James Monroe and their influence on.
I tell everybody to go back, if they've never read them, go back and read the writings of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Adams, and the other founding fathers, because if you go back and read them, you'll understand what they actually wanted for our country. They truly wanted a separation of church and state because they watched how the Vatican, how the Pope corrupted the king and corrupted their government. Because they allowed religion to get in and infiltrate it to the point where it didn't matter what religion you were persecuted.
Yep.
Period.
Yep. Yeah. And I go to one of my, I don't know if I call it my favorite quotes, but a quote from Thomas Jefferson that was, "The tree of liberty shall be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots."
And tyrants.
And tyrants. Yeah. And
patriots and tyrants.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like, again, they would be, if people were like, "Oh, well, we're protecting our founding fathers." The founding fathers came up, they'd be pissed. They
Honestly,
would, they would be.
If they came out of a portal today and they'd be looking at it, they'd be like, "Why haven't you guys killed him yet? Why haven't you revolted? Why haven't you done it? We did it. Why haven't you?"
Women they'd be like, "What do you mean you have the same constitution? What do you mean it has, there's only 20 some odd of them?" And like, what do you mean by this?
Mean that women and blacks are still treated as second-class citizens?
Yeah, exactly.
They wanted to free all the slaves when they founded our country. They just couldn't because they were so split on the topic.
Yeah.
Majority of our founding fathers wanted to abolish slavery with the induction of our Constitution.
Yeah. It's there's just we when we look back, you have to look back, right? Because I've seen so many people talk about corollaries between what's going on now in Nazi Germany, and then I remind people that the Nazis learned it from us with the eugenics movement and slavery and all of those things. So when we talk about what the Nazis did, we also talk about what we did prior to the Nazis, and our own, sordid history of things. But we have to look back and understand these things to what was, when I study political science, I talk a lot about what the original intent was, right? And you have to look at, some people take the original intent to mean, okay, this is exactly what the words say, and I'm going to interpret exactly what the words say, and that's it. Another way to look at it is, okay, this is what the words say. Well, what did they mean when they wrote those words? Where did that come from? Were they thinking about the Magna Carta? Were they thinking about something else? What was the source, and what were they trying to understand? And then you get into reading the Federalist Papers, and you get letters from John Adams and Benjamin Franklin and Alexander Hamilton and correspondence. Like, you go down this really deep, rabbit hole of stuff.
All of their writings, their letters, their notes. It really it opens up this whole thing going, huh? So he set up our government perfectly in a way, understand this, where they set it up to happen two ways. One is our government did what they wanted it to do. It evolved. It grew with the times. It expanded. It became more functional, not dysfunctional. Or the other option was exactly what we have now, where it spun out of control. People with greed got into power, corruption, invaded, and it became a authoritarian dictatorship regime. They actually talked about in those writings what to do if that happens. That's where we have the states, and the states are supposed to take back their power. If the federal government falls, it even talks about how the states are supposed to stand up and take back their power from the federal government to protect their people. And if that's not happening, it is on the people to rise up and take back their power.
Yeah. I think the Federalist Papers and then their response, their so-called anti-Federalist Papers, should be required reading in school, because it's, we talk about the Constitution, we talk about the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights and, Articles of Confederation, all of those things. But the true intent of the founding fathers and the framers of these documents comes out in those, that was how they aired the conversations and the debates that were going on. And they were not all on the same page, for many parts of it. They came to, a consensus to pass something. But I think there's so, like you're saying, that there's so much in there, and you see the insight behind some of these men and what they were doing. I also tell people you have to how young some of these men were. I mean, I'm incredibly young, and I get this right. Alexander Hamilton, I think, was 18 when he signed the Declaration of Independence. And Jefferson was in his early 20s when he wrote it. Madison was in his early 20s when he wrote
most of them were
the Constitution. Yeah, and
the majority of them were
what they were
younger.
Yeah, and what they were doing and the ideas that they were presenting and the conversations that they were having. I mean, I think even when they disagreed, and then they disagreed on a lot of things, and you can see that aired out in the correspondence if you read it. When they disagreed, they still disagreed with respect, and they still, there was obviously
they had grace. They were
yeah
to each other, going, "Hey, listen, I like you as a person. We just don't agree on this topic."
Yeah.
But we're not going to yell at each other. We're not going to get nasty. We're not going to point fingers. We're just going to have a debate, and we're going to have a conversation about both of our sides of it and why we feel that way, which is how it should be.
Exactly. It's and I think there's just, and so I always cringe when I hear someone talk about, with the founding fathers, man. And I was like, honestly, you're so far off the mark. And I don't even claim to be, a historical expert, but anyone who proclaims that in the political arena is generally so far off the mark of the intent of what was meant, or how they viewed it, or who they were as individuals. And it gets me, but it's just, again, it goes back to a lot of things. We have to want to do this, and I think for so long the Democrats have not wanted to do this. We had power, we had the ability to pass some of these things when we passed the Affordable Care Act. Medicare for all was a possibility. We didn't do it.
Right.
We didn't do it.
Because
we just didn't do it. We didn't.
That was the insurance companies and the pharmacies and all of those people making their money. Because if it was Medicare for all, they would no longer need to exist.
Exactly. And it's just, we've had these moments, we've had these opportunities, and where people say, "Oh, well, you're in the minority now. What you can do?" Well, there's a lot that you can do when you're in the minority to obstruct the wheel. Just someone go talk to Mitch McConnell.
Part of the minority now does not always mean it's going to be the minority.
Exactly. And like I said, and Mitch McConnell's not a favorite person in our house, but it's talk to him. Just someone in the Democratic Party pick up the phone and say, "Mitch, what did you do? How'd you do this, man? What tactics did you use?" Because they gummed up the works for a long time. Yep. And it's just astounding to me that this is the environment and the climate that we're in. And I think that's why, for me, that's why I decided to run. And I decided to do this because we need, and then I've been inspired seeing how many other people are running, because we need a new generation of leaders and people and who are willing to have the different conversations. And, I know we're not going to reelect all 435 new people, in the seats. There's going to be some people, but that if I go in there and I can hold a number of other, Maryland has 8 delegates in their congressional delegation, and almost all of them have one of them. Jamie Raskin is almost certainly going to get reelected. He's very popular. He's got a challenger, but it's an uphill battle. But all of the other 7 delegates have primary challengers, and people are sending messages in terms of how they feel about that. And even if some of them get reelected, the hope is if we can pick up 1 or 2 progressives in those seats and people who are willing to have those conversations, we'll be able to hold the rest of them accountable. Yep. And I'm excited when elected to sit down and work with someone like Jamie Raskin. I used to live in his district. I think he is, a good man, but I don't agree with everything he does, and I'm not going to be afraid to tell him that. I'm going to hold him accountable.
Who are not afraid to say, "Hey, I don't agree with you on this topic. I agree with you on this topic, but I don't agree on this one," because that is okay. Yeah. It is okay to not agree with everybody on 100% of the things.
Yep. Yeah, no, and like I said, and it's not personal, and I hope that he holds me accountable, and the whole delegation, and Yeah, I know you will. Yeah. And I expect that. I mean, I expect that when I talk with people and I say that, like, hold me accountable. I mean, call me out. If I do something boneheaded, post a video. And I hope it goes viral. You calling me a bonehead for what I did, because I deserve it. I deserve to be held accountable. I'm not afraid of that. And I think too many, because you're talking about representatives versus politicians. Too many politicians are afraid of it, but there's also representatives who are afraid. They're afraid of it. They're there for the people, but they're honestly so afraid of the people revolting that fear paralyzes them, and they don't actually do something. And then the people do revolt. They do get what they feared, because they're doing that. I mean,
prophecy. It really is. If
it
you're
is.
so afraid they're going to vote you out, they're going to vote you out. So instead of being afraid
absolutely.
of that, be like, you know what? Regardless of what happens, these 2 years, this is my job. If they don't vote me back, they don't vote me back. But you know what? In that time, I'm going to do everything I can to help these people, even if I look like an idiot doing it.
Yeah, and then my wife holding me accountable in the comments that my constituents can call you.
That's what I do.
So I was waiting for her to chime in with that comment. Yeah. And like I said, there's the therapy and the learning to get better, and that's where that comes in of doing that. But no, I mean, it's a constant evolution and of doing that, and we have to hold people accountable. We have to do it. And I'm not gonna. I can guarantee I'm not gonna necessarily like when I'm getting called out for doing something. I can't promise that I will enjoy it. But I'm gonna listen to it, and you learn from it.
Something I've learned, and it's called growth, is 9 times out of 10, growth is not comfortable. It's not pleasant. You don't want to hear what people have to say, but you know what? When you do, you can actually use it to become a better version of yourself. And what I've heard from you, that is one of your goals for yourself in this life, is to constantly strive to just be a better version of yourself each and every day. That is me. That's me. Is every day I wake up. Even if yesterday I bungled everything up, today I'll do that.
And that's absolutely that's what you have to do. You have to try to improve. And my wife, as she's watching this, well, I'll sit and I'll make this joke, is that she says that she would never get rid of me because she doesn't want to go through training someone else like she's trained me.
My husband, I almost left him last May, and it was based on about 10 years of neglect when it comes down to meeting certain needs, and me just trying to give him as much grace as possible, because I know he's ADHD and I know his focus is on this and this and this, but it's been so focused that he's lost sight of everything else. And I was trying to get him to come back out, and I finally got to the point where either you have to shit or get off the pot. Either you choose to make the choices and you start walking forward, or I can't do this anymore. I feel like I'm drowning because you're standing still, and I feel like I've just walked a circle around you to the point where I'm at the bottom of this well and I cannot get out unless you make a step forward. I can't live like that anymore. And so, mind you, he and my mom and my brother were here because I pointed fingers at all three of them, and I let them know how over the last decade they've all let me down, how they keep promising these things and they don't follow through.
Stand up for yourself. I love that.
Well, and it's one of those, I looked at him and I said, I have no more grace to give myself. I hate myself because I have given all of myself away to everybody else, and nobody's given anything in return. So, and I told him, I said, as of right now, the only people who are getting my grace, my understanding, my forgiveness are my kids and myself. You are all grown-ass adults. Figure it out. I'm done.
I am here for this. I love it. Yes.
And mind you, we're still together, and our relationship is so much stronger because one of the things he asked, okay, can we once a month, then can we sit down and talk? I said, okay, well then once a month, I want a date night.
There you go.
Sit down and talk. I want a date night. He fumbled it because he took me to the movie for the first one, and I was really, really upset. He stayed in his comfort zone. And I told him, I said, you said you wanted one night a month where we sat down and talked. So I told you I want one date night a month so we can sit down and talk. Just you and me doing something we enjoy.
Yeah.
So
the movie's not that.
Anniversary, he took me to my favorite little dessert shop. It's called Cake Bake. And there's one in Florida and one here. And no, it was expensive. Oh, it was $100 dinner, but I was so happy. And we sat there and we talked for about 3.5, almost 4 hours before we hit up the grocery store to pick up dessert snacks and went home and chilled for a minute because my mom took the kids for the weekend. So we just hung
Yeah.
out and we had our conversation, and I was happy, he was happy. But that's just it, is he started actually focusing on me and the relationship instead of just assuming it would always be here, and he didn't have to put in the effort.
Yeah.
Just jump in. We don't want much. We just want effort. We want you to try. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
try.
Yeah.
You
You know,
try.
I think one of the
Grace.
weird things for me is that this campaign has been a positive asset for the relationship between my wife and I because and we've always been, I mean, both of us are coming at this from second marriage, and this is a second marriage for both of us. And so we saw what we did wrong in our first marriages, and we wanted to learn from that and evolve and do better. And so we've always had good communication and good that because that was something that was, brutal honesty. It's one of the things we've always told ourselves. We'll be brutally honest with ourselves,
It's one of those.
and
I'm
each other.
brutally honest with myself. I'm brutally
Yeah.
honest with him. I'm just
Yeah.
honest with the kids, not brutally. But there are sometimes
Yeah, exactly.
and be like, okay, listen, I love you, but let's strip away all fanciness and let's be honest about
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I had to talk to my daughter about why her education is so important and explain to her that our government is quite literally trying to take education away from women and females. And if she does not learn now, she may not have the opportunity in a few years to learn the.
Yeah. But those are the conversations, and like I said, and that's why for this campaign, I think my wife and I have just it's brought some conversations for us to talk about things, and it's also we talked about men's mental health, but it's forced me to open up about some things about my vulnerabilities and how I feel about things, and not every conversation has been easy.
No.
And I can be honest about that, and some of them I've gotten wrong and how I've handled it and how I've approached that, and I've learned, and but it's how it's brought us. I think it's helped us a lot, and and it's been a nice experience to be able to share so much of this with her, and some of my kids understand. My oldest is 11; she understands. My 9-year-old understands some of it. My 4-year-old understands hardly any of it. I tell her I'm doing something special or fun, and then I'm in meetings and calls, and she gets that, and she does great with with trying to be quiet and things like that. But to get to share this experience and to do those things is I think been good for our family, and because I worried about that. I think that was one of my biggest fears entering into this is. And it sounds weird that some people might say, well, why was that your biggest fear? But honestly, my biggest fear is what was this going to do to my family? Was it going to hurt my family to run for Congress? And if it was, and I knew it was going to take me away from home, and I knew, that was one of the things, but, if it was going to be destructive, then I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to do it. And I'm not just praising my wife because she's watching, but she has been. I couldn't be doing this without her. The days that she takes and deals with 3 kids, and the days that, she's stayed up late with me, and she'll get up early with me, and run errands and do things and support me and listen to me ramble and then listen to me whine and complain and how things are not. She's there. She's my sounding board, and she has a little bit of political experience herself, so. And she's learned that, and she's invested in learning, and I think that is invaluable to this. It's honestly my hidden gem. It's my hidden tool that could propel me through, is having that, because politics is such a lonely experience. Running for office is incredibly lonely, and incredibly isolating. And you realize that pretty quickly. But it doesn't have to be that way when you surround yourself. And I have, a person that I live with who I can share this experience with. And then I have a great team of people that I work with who support me, and they build me up, but they also are not afraid to call me out on my bullshit. I say the wrong thing, I do the wrong thing, they correct me.
You shouldn't surround yourself with yes men. You should surround yourself with
exactly
people who care and are your friends, because your real friends will sit there and be like, listen, I adore the ever living crap out of you, but let's be honest, let's have this conversation real quick because
Yeah. And I've got those people who, they'll keep me in check. But this is too risky, or this, if you thought about this way or that way, and because it's, and I talk a lot about my campaign. I say we, And I've said to someone this, well, why do you say we? Because I said, because I'm not doing this alone. Well, first off, I'm doing this for the people, but I'm also, there's a team behind this. I am the face. I'm the person
Royal
who's running. My
I,
name's,
I use we when I say and we because it's not just me, it's my audience, it's my community. I never know if
yeah,
people are gonna come sit. I know Rock was in here earlier. He's got a new puppy, so we're
yeah,
probably about to take care of that. Some of my other
yeah,
mods will come and just sit and keep an eye on it. Other people will just sit and hang out. I never know, but it's a we because it's not just me. I'm not doing this
yeah,
just for myself. Yes,
yeah,
I am
yeah,
partially doing it for myself because I'm greedy and I am selfish and I want to make sure that the country I live in is going to be designed to support me, my kids, my grandkids,
yeah,
their kids, and every other child I've never met in the future generations.
yeah.
That's how
And this
freaking
is the
selfish
we
I
is the
am because
nearly,
I want
yeah.
my life to be so easy that I want everybody else's life to be easy too.
Yeah, exactly. The we for me is the almost 800,000 people who live in my district, right? And whether you vote for me or you don't, whether you agree with my politics or not, I'm still going to represent you. I'm still going to fight for you. I'm still going to do all of those things for you to try to make your life as good as possible. And I think what's rewarding for me is seeing along the way that I've connected with Republicans. I've connected with people who are far right, and I've tried to find those commonalities, those places where we can agree on something and have that discussion, because that's important to me, because I want to represent everyone. I want to make life better for everyone, and it's it's a collective we. And like I said, it takes a team, and I have been so lucky to have great people, supporting me, some in official roles, some in unofficial roles. And, every day yeah, exactly. Yeah. I got more
I'm
accountability
helping
buddies.
everybody's campaign. If you haven't interviewed with
Yeah.
me, and this is what I keep telling people.
Yeah.
Oh, I plan on having everybody back every about 4, 6, 8 weeks, depending on what you're running for and how
Yeah.
busy we both are. Why? Because
Yeah.
it's not just about finding out what you're doing right now. It's seeing you evolve, seeing you put your plan
Yeah.
together, having more conversations because you're going to have more conversations and you're going to put your plan together better and you're going to have a better
Yeah.
idea. And then if you get the office, keeping in touch with you to make sure we hold you accountable. If you don't, what are your next steps? Because it sounds like you're somebody who's not going to give up with just this.
I'm not.
And
No,
I
I'm not
love
going
that.
away.
That is my whole
I'm
goal
not.
is to find the people where,
Yeah.
okay, if I don't get it this time, let's get it next time. I will help you build
Yeah.
up the people. I will help you do whatever it needs because I have the
Yeah.
ability to. And my
Yeah.
husband, goddess love him, I would not be able to do anything I'm doing without his support because I got 2 kids.
Yeah.
I'm going away one weekend, if not 2 weekends, every month until the end of October. Why?
Yeah.
Because of my business. I actually have 8 multi-day events, and some of these events, I will be generating $2,000 to $3,000 a day. Yeah,
It's worth it. Yeah.
it's worth
Yeah.
it. But that's the whole reason is I have to have somebody here with my kids, and he's one of the
Yeah.
2 people I trust. Now we also have plans that over the summer he's going to take some time off and bring the kids because I can bring my family with me. They've already
Yeah.
invited me to bring my kids and my husband because they want to meet them.
Oh, that's awesome that you can.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, you have to understand the Bella Garth community. They met me, they accepted me, and I love them because it was the first time I truly felt at home, and I was
Yeah. Yeah.
being me, and I had my cosplay on, and I was acting out and having fun and giggling, and people loved it. And I'm like, I'm not even
That's
performing. I'm
awesome.
just being me, and I love them. So you better me.
That's awesome. It's important to find those spaces. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for me, I can make a lot of money while helping a lot of people who have just welcomed me into their community. No questions
Yeah.
asked, just happy I'm there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Speaking of family, there is a space shuttle launch that's going to be taking place shortly that I want to watch with my kids. But I do want to come back,
Yeah.
Shadow, because I have had a delight, and I feel like as long as we've talked, we still barely scratched the surface of things to talk about. Yes. So,
and that's why I keep telling people, it's like, I have my notes. And as we've been writing, I've been making more notes so that we're like, okay, I'm going to look into this. And the next time we're going to touch on that. And because understand, I have some information about a lot of things, but I don't necessarily have all the information about everything. So when there's topics we bring up that I don't really have a whole bunch of information on, and you do, I'm going to look into it more so I can have those conversations and understand what you're telling me, so then I can turn around and explain it to others if I need to. Be like, hey guys, what are you saying this? He's talking about XYZ, so people are not confused.
Yep, absolutely. But yeah, I would love to come back and talk more about these issues. Absolutely.
So what I want from you is when we get off of here, shoot me your email address to send the video to. So once it's downloaded, I will get it over to you. And then we
Sounds good.
schedule and we'll go from there.
Awesome. I've had a blast.
You have to. Thank you so much for coming and joining me, Ethan.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll talk soon.
Yes. Take care.
Bye. How do I? Well, this is going to be it. Now everyone gets to watch me. Oh, there we go.
I was gonna say up to
I got it now.
you should see it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So that was Ethan Wechtaluk. I can pronounce his name maybe if I have water. That was Ethan Wechtaluk. He is running for Maryland's U.S. Congressional District 6. So that is for the U.S. House of Representatives on the federal level. So I will get this video posted. He's literally running in my district. Yes, Frank. So here's the thing. I will be posting this video to YouTube. So please, 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 I will let you know when it's posted in the next day or two. Go watch it, like it, and then I will be making clips from that and comment on them. Anyway, so I will have him on again. So next time, definitely make sure to make it. But yeah, I'm going to wrap it up for today. That was Ethan Wechtaluk. He's running in Maryland's Congressional District 6. And it was a pleasure having you all in. Thank you for coming and hanging out with me, guys. Much love and take care. Take care, Frank. I'll catch you later.